Well, hello, 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 and welcome back to another episode of the Summer Spotlight 2020. I am your host, Gayle Nicholson. How are you all doing today on this happy Monday morning? Excuse me. It's been a phenomenal weekend, and I am so excited to be back here again with you. I'd love to introduce you to my guest today. My guest today comes to us from JohnKennyCoaching.com. He is a relationship freedom coach by the name of John Kenny. How are you doing today, John? How are you?
Hi, Gail. Nice to see you. I'm doing really well. Thank you very much. How's things with you?
Very good, thank you. Where are you located? You have such a wonderful accent.
Thank you very much. I am located just north of London in the UK.
Phenomenal, phenomenal. My family comes from southern England in a little town called Truro, but that's a few generations back. So
Okay, yeah, that's
yeah,
right. In the
nice, awesome.
mm,
So tell me a little bit. Give me a little bit of background, will you please? And if you would, this may be a separate question entirely, but explain what you mean by relationship freedom coach.
okay, let me start with that. So relationships are things that we can kind of get stuck in. We have a tendency to learn how to build our own relational patterns when we're children, and they might not necessarily be the healthiest things that we develop because of the environment that we grow up in. So to be able to be free within your relationships is a sense of emotional freedom, for you to be able to choose the relationships that you want and feel like you can be completely yourself. I struggled a lot with that, hence how I got into the field in the first place. I had no acceptance of who I was at all, and really struggled with those kind of relational patterns and end up having toxic, unhealthy types of relationships. Didn't really know how to accept anything that was positive or good for me, and spent a lot of the time basically self-sabotaging, messing up my own life. And that kind of led me on to the path where I am now, where I now coach other people to be able to not make the same sort of mistakes that I did.
Awesome. So it's more of a matter of not feeling so constricted and oppressed within a relationship, right? Finding that ability to be your own sovereign self while still in partnership with others. That's an interesting
Mm.
angle to come at it from, and I appreciate that because we these days we tend to just throw away relationships if they have problems, as
Mm.
opposed to our parents and grandparents generation that it was like, no, you got to figure out a way to make this work.
Yeah, definitely, and they did make it work. It may not have been the healthiest space for them to be in,
Hmm.
um, but generally, I found that when you talk to people around that kind of thing, is that they get used to each other after many many years, or settle, or just get used to the idea of there being in that relationship. Whereas actually, there's so much you can do about it. You can change the whole dynamic of a relationship, the health of a relationship, if you want to work at it. Um, it doesn't necessarily mean that you can make a relationship work, because if you need to change and the relationship dynamic needs to change and you're happy to do that, but the other person isn't willing to come with you, then it's never going to be what you want it to be on both sides, generally, and it may be better than you're not together. But there are lots of things you can do to try and make a relationship function healthily before you decide that it's time to walk away.
What are some of those things?
I think it's about the main thing is to understand how you're both working. So if you can understand what your kind of relationship you've got with yourself is and why you're in this relationship in the first place, identify your relational patterns. If that other person is happy to do that with you, then you can start understanding what you both really want from a relationship, maybe rather than what you felt that you needed before.
Hmm.
perhaps you had a unhealthy pattern that you've evolved, and you're with that person because those patterns matched up very nicely, so you're kind of on that same energy wavelength.
Mm-hmm.
But as you kind of get older, you realize that you don't want to be in that space anymore, and there are things you can do about that to change that space, and just hopefully you can come together to be able to work on that, sort of understanding what each other wants, what your kind of love language is. I'm not sure if you've heard of the 5 love languages.
I have. I haven't. I haven't really decided which I am though.
Well, we're all a mixture of there's probably more than 5 anyway, but we're all a mixture of all of them or some of them, but we all have our own primary, generally what we learn as children, how we like to be loved, and we have a tendency to show love in the way that we like to be loved. So if I like to be hugged a lot and that's how I feel loved, then I have a tendency to hug a lot of people because I feel like I'm giving it in the same way. But if I'm hugging someone who likes to hear it and I never say it, then they're never going to really feel like I love them, and vice versa. If they could tell me as much as they like, if they're not showing me in a way that I feel it, then I'm never really going to know how much they care about. And again, so it's understanding each other's love language. What's the primary one? What do we really like the most? And how do we feel cared for the most? And we can start to tap into those types of things too.
That's awesome stuff. Um, Now, how is it that you've come to be able to see people's relationship patterns? And give me some examples. What does that mean, really?
Okay, so I originally trained as a counsellor, started back in 2004. And when I was working with my clients, my supervisor always told me I was really good at the relational stuff. And it is really just understanding how we do relationships and how relationships function. What do we get out of them? What are we putting into them? What needs are we getting met? And because I came from, as I said, a very kind of dysfunctional space myself, it was something I was really interested in working on for me. So I understood from my childhood that relationships were very painful, that they were there 1 minute and gone the next, and that nothing around a relationship was positively sustainable. So I experienced a lot of pain, and my brain, 2 things it did: it got used to accepting the pain, and it also got used to putting things into place to avoid the pain. So as I got older, I would have a tendency to choose relationships that got me back into that kind of space. My safe space as a child was to be by myself. So I would disappear to my bedroom to escape the difficulties that I was having then. And again, that's something I took into my adult life. So I would have a tendency to choose relationships which were unsustainable. So they were maybe hot and cold, chaotic. And then I would feel the same way as I did as a child, which would be that nobody really cares about me, that relationships are unreliable, and I'm actually better off on my own. So therefore, I would always choose a relationship which I was looking for a way of getting out of, always looking for an ending before it had begun. So therefore, I would end up having longer term relationships with people that I knew there was always going to be a get out for me. And it would usually end up with me feeling very undervalued, unworthy. And therefore I'd say, oh, look, this is happening again. I don't really want to be here. And then I would end up on my own. When I met someone that didn't meet that criteria, I would then do things to avoid being hurt. So when I couldn't see an escape, I would create an escape. So I wouldn't be a particularly nice person. I would make them want to push me away. And if that didn't work, I would just run away myself because I didn't know how to deal with something that could be sustainable.
Isn't it interesting how the human condition is that we all start from trying to prove our decisions about life that we made when we were 4, 5, 6 years old are right. And we spend most of our adult lives until it becomes so painful that we have to change. Just trying to prove ourselves right unconsciously. Like, we don't do it on purpose,
No.
but that's the safety zone. That's the subconscious going, okay, this is the familiar, this is where we're going to stay, this is, what we're out to prove. And it does take something for a person to look at their own patterns and their patterns in relationships, and first of all be able to recognize that there is a disserving pattern there, and then actually start doing the work and doing the looking to reprogram that so that you stay awake and that you can call yourself out, and that you can receive it when your partner calls you out. What is the timeline in your experience for people to retrain their programming and their patterns to create a more fulfilling and freedom feeling relationship without losing the relationship?
It's variable because we come up against the other side of the relationship. So I work mostly with individuals, and it's for them to take the changes that they want to see back into the relationship. And it depends on how comfortable the other person is on accepting those changes and buying into that. That will be the success of the relationship or not. And again, it could be that there's not really anything that the other person needs to do either. It could all be down to the individual. There was lots of times when I was in relationships where the person I was with probably didn't need to do any changing at all. It was all of my screwed up stuff that was causing the problems. So I offer a 90-day coaching package because I generally find that gives us enough time to really uncover what the issues are, to put things in place to change them, and then if there's any resistance to the change, because as you said, the brain has put those things into place to keep you safe, and there could be a certain amount of resistance in you to make the changes that you need to make because your brain doesn't really want to do it. So that generally gives us enough time to start to put changes into place and address any resistance patterns that come in that stop the changes from completely taking hold and moving forwards. They do say a new habit takes anywhere between 21 and 280 something days, I think, to form. But on average, it's about 80 something days. I think it's 84 days. So a 90-day program generally gives us enough time to implement the new changes we need to put in there.
Excellent. And I just want to clarify that it's a free consultation that you're offering, and the 90-day package is not free.
No, that would never make any money, would I, doing that?
No, but you'd have a whole lot of work, I'm sure.
If I could get some money from somewhere else, then maybe I could make the coaching free.
There you go. That's my impossible dream, is to just have enough passive income, and it's not an impossible dream, but winning the lottery to get it is the impossible dream. Where you just have enough passive income that you can just go do what you want to do, Yeah,
that'd be great if I could.
Right.
Yeah.
So this is something, though, that you don't have to necessarily talk your partner into doing for you necessarily. You can do this yourself and watch your relationship shift without your partner having to shift a thing. Correct?
Yeah, they don't even
in
know.
Some cases.
Yeah, they don't have to shift if they don't. It's unlikely that you would have chosen someone, depending on the severity of your own kind of issues and how deeply cut they are. It's unlikely you've chosen someone that's going to be in a really healthy space with you, but you can do, and I've known clients to have done.
I know also
shifts with people, and I was the problem. They don't necessarily need to change, but I would suggest that there probably would be some shift that needs to take place within the dynamics of the relationship.
Well, I think as well, when I'm talking about relationships with other people, sometimes when the drama comes up, I refer to it as the dance of demons, right? Because it's not me, my conscious mind, that's becoming this shrill horrible, you can't win with me, and I'm going to point out all your flaws woman, in that moment.
Mm.
It's that programming that's rising up and reacting to whether it's push him away or whatever, right? And that activates his defenses, his demon, right? And I've noticed for myself, and I wonder if you have noticed too in this in your clientele, that when I shift over here what my trigger is doing, right? Um, it shifts over there too because the same demon isn't getting called up, right? And it's like there's things in me that trigger a symbiotic relationship in my partner that if I fix the thing in me, they don't get triggered the same way anymore. Have you found that true for your clients?
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And there's like a few things that can then happen. The first thing is that that's okay and that works really well. Um, Second thing is that they need to be triggered. So if you stop triggering, they'll be looking for you to trigger them all. They'll be looking for you to do that. So because they're in their space, and if they're used to that in a relationship, they might try and push your buttons in order to get a certain reaction out of you. So we just have to be mindful that when we are changing, it could disrupt the usual flow of things, and you might find that there is that resistance in them comes up to change. So they will push you a bit harder because they don't want this relationship to be different. So there's a few things we need to just kind of be careful with when we do that, and then we can decide, okay, well, I can see that they're struggling now with these new changes, but it's then up to us to decide, okay, how are we going to then, do we need to send them off to get some help to manage their triggers? Because if they really need it and they're not going to let you get away without triggering them off, then you'll really struggle to kind of keep your changes in a place that you want to, because it'll cause a lot of pressure on the whole relationship.
Gotcha.
But yeah, it could, like you said, it could just be that their triggers are not then set off, and therefore you can have a much more harmonious relationship. But I would also suggest, if they haven't really done the work on themselves that you're doing to kind of sort of destabilize those triggers in the first place and try not to get them to exist, then it's likely that it will come up somewhere in the future.
Yeah, that would make sense. And forgive me, but this as you were talking about that, when you're trying to change your triggers and then that becomes unfamiliar for the partner, so the partner pushes harder trying to get you to trigger. What flew through my head is the unfortunate women that have decided, due to growing up in an abusive household, that if the husband doesn't beat the wife, he doesn't love her. And that could be extremely detrimental if the husband is trying to get better about the way they've been programmed through their childhood. And the wife doesn't really know what's going on, and she's like, why did you stop loving me? Because that's what that means to her.
Yeah.
Yeah. So definitely with guidance.
Yeah.
Don't try this at home. Okay. Just with guidance.
Yeah, because we need to work out what are the changes that are taking place, and what are the consequences of that. And so you can work with somebody that helps you to keep on track to where you want to get to. And if it is necessary, then you can bring the other partner into the sessions if that's an appropriate thing to do. Or if they are that way, then it's really important that they do seek their own individual help. But like you said earlier on, I think it's like, will they recognize they've got a problem? Is it just because it's so normal for them they don't want to break out of this space? And it's up to you to decide whether you're going to allow yourself to stay into a space which you know is never going to change for the best for you.
Right. Absolutely. Now, during this whole COVID quarantine and the uncertainty, the absurdity of some of the rules and assumptions, what kind of impact from that are you seeing with your clients right now?
So it's had it's had several different impacts. So there are people that I've spoken to that are really glad that they've been in isolation or away from certain relationships because it's made them take a step back and realize what those relationships are actually about. So whether they're good for them, whether they're not good for them, whether they feel better not being around these people. And if they feel worse, what is it that they feel worse about? Again, is that a healthy thing because they want to be in this person's space, or is it a need that they're trying to fulfill that is an unhealthy space? There are people that have spent far too much time together and have realized they don't really get on and don't have much in common. And it worked because they were spending more time apart than they were together. And there's other people that have just realized they really enjoy each other's company. And it's made them a lot closer because they've been able to spend time together that they wouldn't have been able to spend before. And being apart was the problem. And was actually then being able to spend more time together. I've got a guy who's just gone back to work, and he's gone straight back into 14-hour days. And it's really put a strain back onto the relationship immediately because he promised he wouldn't do that. So we're working on the moment is why is he avoiding the relationship again? And there are issues from his past which he doesn't again believe relationships are sustainable. So he's got really close to his wife over these few months. And now he's had the opportunity to escape. He's taken that opportunity and he's run. So we're just working on the kind of avoidance issues he's got from sort of the attachment stuff that he's got from his childhood.
Now,
So
that
really
brings up a really good question. What about, it's a bad word for the term, but backsliding, where a new stressor has been introduced into the lives of those in the relationship, like going back to work and going back to the old behaviors unconsciously. How often do you see stuff like that happen?
Yeah, so as I said, this is why I offer a 90-day coaching, is because that generally will give us enough time. It's been slightly different during lockdown, but then we've kind of made allowances for the spaces between in the coaching. But you generally get enough time to address those. Because it is a forward-looking sort of process. This is what we're doing, and this is what we want to do about it. Let's get these some things into place so we can start having a little bit of a practice and a play with these to see what it does bring up for us. Then we can say, okay, this is triggering my need to run, or this is triggering my need to hold on, and I don't want to do this, or I don't need to do this. And then we start to put, we work on that area of procrastination, avoidance, whatever it might be, anxiety, that then may make us want to backslide, as you put it.
Right, gotcha. Now, in a best case scenario, right, what is the intention, the goal, the end game, so to speak, for the couples that you work with? What are you shooting for?
Okay, so I mostly work with individuals, but the important thing is that they break their own cycles, patterns that are unhealthy, and that they can really bring to the fore some new behaviors or tap into what they've done in the past that's been really healthy. So they can get a choice. So one of the phrases I liked to use when I first started this was to live the life you choose. So it's not the one that you feel like you should or you have to, or the one that you've always done. It's okay, what can I do? What do I want? This is my choice. This is the kind of relationship I want. This is how I want to feel. To be able to choose your emotions rather than have those forced upon you or delve into the old emotions from your past, which you don't really need to have any longer. So the aim is to get people into this space of emotional freedom and relationship freedom, so they feel like they know themselves and they can be their authentic self as often as they choose to, which is hopefully most of the time. We all have to wear masks on certain occasions, but we don't want to deviate too much from what's really our authentic self. And if our relationship is making us deviate, if other things are making us deviate, if there's something with us that's making us deviate, then we want to be able to stop doing that, so we feel congruent and whole, and happy with who we are.
Very nice. Um, I'm sorry. I was going to ask you a question and it just flew out of my head. Um, so with clients that you have worked with in the past, I realize that you usually, more often than not, work with just one individual, not necessarily couples counseling, so to speak. But with clients that you've had in the past, what is the likeliness that they're going to come to a choice where it's like, I've now outgrown this relationship. This is why it's still painful, and my authenticity says that I need to end this relationship. Do you find that very often?
Not very often, no. Generally, um, generally both parties will recognize that the relationship isn't healthy. And then once one person decides to make a change, the other person will come along for the ride. And then, like I said, sometimes the couples will then come together. And then I can work with them both in order to help them through the changes that they're making. But yeah, it's there are occasions where the person doesn't move. I mean, if I am a people pleaser, I have a tendency then to attract people that like to take. So if I'm always doing something for somebody and I've been with them for 10, 15 years, and then all of a sudden I realize that people pleasing is doing me a lot of damage, and then I stop or withdraw my people pleasing side, they are going to really not be able to cope because they're used to taking from me and me giving all the time. If they are not a person that wants to shift or can shift from that space, then the relationship is very unlikely to survive. It's if they then go, oh yeah, you know what, I realized that you've been looking after me for all this time and I've been doing this and I've been doing that. I'd like to rebalance this relationship, then it can be okay. But if you've met a taker, they're a taker. If they don't want to shift from that space, they're not going to shift from that space, and therefore you're probably better off not staying with them unless there is some way the relationship can be functional. But generally, that's not going to be fulfilling enough for you to, maybe spend the next 30, 40, 50 years with someone.
That's when till death do you part really becomes oppressive.
Yeah.
And motivating.
So when I work with my clients, what I'd say is that I have a little sort of really just do this. Okay, at the moment, most of the relationship is on this person's terms. So generally, the person that's talking to me is because it's on the terms of the other person. Mm-hmm. Now, we don't want them to come over here. We want them to come to here. So it doesn't take a lot. We need to be in this space when we're by ourselves or whatever, because this is our space. But when we're with someone, we can quite happily meet in the middle. Mm-hmm. So we're not asking them to come too far, but they're so used to being over here. It's just whether they've got the want, desire, need to do that. And again, how deep are their own issues, patterns that they're carrying that will stop them from doing that.
You bring up a really great point as well, kind of as a side effect of that answer, I think, and that is going to your partner and explaining, this about me is not working for me. I'd like to shift it to here. Will you do this in partnership with me and meet me halfway, as opposed to, well, I'm changing and screw you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. Because that's no good for you either. Because this is an inbuilt behavior. Like you said earlier on, this is a subconscious behavior. This has been built up over many, many, many years. Mm-hmm. And for you to just say, well, this is changing and all that, generally doesn't work for you either, because you frighten your brain into shutdown. Your brain says, no, too much, too soon. And when I've worked with people that do try and do too much too soon, your old beliefs, the way you've always done, will fight back. And it'll say, no, this is too much. This is far too much change in one go. Your brain likes certainty,
Mm-hmm.
and if you create too much uncertainty, you can really freak yourself out. So yeah, we don't, again, that wouldn't be something I'd advocate anyway, that you say you're coming with me or
Right.
away you go. It is a collaborative thing. Most of the work you can do at the start, that they don't even have to know you're doing it. But it's interesting when people do that. It's just the one I did is just to note what you're. And again, this isn't just about partners. This is families as well. This is something you can try with your parents. So if your parents are in a space where you're not particularly comfortable with, if it's friends as well, if you've got friends, work colleagues, you can change all of your relationships by changing yourself. And then just note what those changes are, and to see who can come with you, who's not going to come with you, who really needs you to be a certain way, or other people that are there to support you in the change. And it's about putting things into practice there, and you'll see by the reaction of people who are going to be the easiest people to bring with you, and who are going to be the most difficult. And then we start working on, okay, if they're not going to change, for instance, if it is a family member, I need to keep them in my life. I want to keep them in my life. How do I put myself into a really healthy space, knowing that they're not going to change? With partners, friends, work, generally we can do something about it. We can walk away if we want to, and that may be the best thing for you to do. But a lot of people that I work with want to have a relationship with their families, and if they are the instigators of the problems, then we work on the individual to manage their mindset when they're in those relationships and spending time in those relationships, so they're not dragged back into difficult sort of emotional spaces for themselves.
Yeah. I imagine that there may be people that are just so unhealthy that it's not a problem. You need to necessarily separate yourself from that relationship for a while until your own progresses to the point where it's solid enough that you can engage and not be triggered by that any longer, I imagine.
Yeah, as you said earlier on about lockdown, that's been a really useful thing for some people, because they've had that space that they wouldn't usually get to reflect and go, actually, this doesn't work for me. What do I want to do about it moving forwards?
Yeah.
And they've given that time to kind of find that clarity.
And I think for me, in my experience, in my own evolvement through life, as scary as it can get when you're working on yourself and someone else isn't working on themselves, and they naturally remove themselves from your life, the beings that come in, whether it's humans or people from work or new friends that fill that space, that are attracted to how you are now, I mean, I say to everyone watching, you have no idea how happy this can make you. You know, and you know, it's amazing how much we can tolerate. You know, like we can be in a garbage dumpster, mud up to our eyeballs, and be like, oh, that's fine. That's just how it is. You know, and then once we decide to jump out of the dumpster, you know, take a shower, wow, there's people at the beach. This is way different, right?
Yeah.
Right? So tell me a little bit, we're about to the end of our time today, and I really want our viewers to get to know a little bit about your membership site that you're offering a discount to Spotlight viewers on, and then also that free consultation that you're offering to our guests. So give us a little bit of information about that.
Okay, so I'm offering a free strategy call consultation to anybody that wants to talk about detail, get an idea about what they'd like to achieve from their relationships, but actually understand themselves a little bit more, so we can talk about that. And then if they decide to, then they want to move on to the coaching, I'm actually going to offer a special on that as well. I usually charge a monthly fee for the coaching, but I'm going to deduct a few $100s from the total amount if anyone's interested in taking up the 90-day package. Again, but I would, if someone books in a free call, then we can discuss that on a one-to-one basis. I do have a membership site as well, as you mentioned. and that's $19. So that's £49 a month. And that's got quite a lot of coaching tools, tips, tricks, guidance on there that people can download a load of PDF sheets and follow for themselves. There's also a few programs on there. There's a couple of video programs where people can follow different. So one's the People program, which is based on my book, which is this one here.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a 6-part coaching program where people can really start to delve into looking at themselves and understand their own sort of life patterns. There's a stress management program. There's a Change Your Habit to Happiness program on there as well. So they all get access to that, and there will be a discount for your viewers, listeners.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for offering that. I really do appreciate it. And quickly, where can they get that book that you just showed?
So it's on Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
Because the title's in an acronym, it's a bit difficult to find. But if you just put John Kenny into Amazon, and in the book section, you'll just put down and you'll see this lovely bright blue cover come up, and they can grab that on Amazon.
Awesome. All right. Well, do you have any final thoughts for our viewers today before we go?
There's one thing that I say to when I do my workshops and stuff. I do events occasionally, and one thing that people seem to take the most value from is when I say that nothing is personal. As I've mentioned before, we all have needs, and I behave in a certain way to meet my own needs. You may be on the end of my behavior, but I'm doing it because I want to, because I need to. So nothing I ever do is ever personal to you. So if we can take our step back out of that, it's personal space, it can release a lot of pressure on us. And we can go, okay, why are they doing that? Why are they behaving in that way? If it's negative, then we can take a step back and go, okay, I'm not taking this negativity on board. And if it's positive, then great, just accept it and put a big smile on your face. But nothing that somebody ever does is personal. So if you can take a step away from taking things personally, you'll be in a much healthier emotional space.
Phenomenal. Wise words, John. Thank you so much. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us again at the beginning of another new week. Have a fabulous, fabulous week ahead. And thank you so much. Thank you so much. Bye-bye. When you open yourself to actual work, makes that so much faster. That recovery, you do not live as a victim last days. You have unbelievable strength because you're still here. You create something unrecognizable.